Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So here I'm sharing with you a reflection on the life of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam. But this is focused on addressing the conditions of young men. I'm using, in addition, Abu al-Hasan Nadwi has stories of the prophets, and it's a cleaner presentation of the lives of the prophets, because Ibn Kathir is not translated well. Ibn Kathir is not translated well. Although Ibn Kathir is solid, but it's not translated well. So the UK Academy, Islamic Academy, they took and they even abridged it further, and they just dealt with the life of the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. It's called The Dream Come True. So part of this reflection is on the relationship between Yaqub and his children. That's first. And second, between Yusuf and his brothers. And the idea is to think about the role of the family, and specific boys. So firstly, one of the things that I liked about the story as it was presented by Mawlana Abu al-Hasan al-Nadwi is he mentioned a detail which sometimes is not brought about. And that detail is not made clear when we think about the relationship between Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam and his brothers, or between his brothers, the brothers of Yusuf, and the father. Does anybody know what was the difference between the brothers of Yusuf and Yusuf in relation to the father? What was the difference between Yusuf and his brothers? Aside from the fact that they believed that the father favored Yusuf. Anybody knows? Huh? Yusuf is a prophet, and his father is a prophet. Yes, they were jealous, but there's a detailed point. That's right. They were both prophets. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was a prophet. Yaqub was a prophet. So this problem is taking place in the household of prophethood. That's not what I was aiming at, but it's good to clarify that.
Interpretation of dreams?
No. Yes, thank you. We don't think about that. Where does that put us in the context of relevancy today? When you have stepchildren. Yes. He said that they had different mothers. Yusuf's his brothers, they had a different mother than Yusuf and his younger brother. The older brothers had a different mother than the younger brothers. That's a point that is overlooked in the story. But then let's go back to the point of, you were mentioning jealousy, right? What did you mention?
I said the dream interpretation.
Yeah, the dream interpretation. But the issue of jealousy, it's easy to say, okay, it's easy to just bring up the point jealousy. Firstly, one of the mistakes we make in Aqidah studies is like, okay, does jealousy belong in Aqidah studies or not? Anybody? Yeah, these brothers say yes. How so?
What do you mean by that? Like, there's a certain level of jealousy like a man should have towards like safeguarding his wife and stuff like that. But I don't know what.
Yeah, I usually, just so you get accustomed in the short period of time we're together, I usually deal with a lot of questions, because I don't just like to, think what I think. You know what I'm saying? I want people to think through stuff. So and I like to pull from the crowd. Right, so jealousy is a topic in and of itself. It's a topic in and of itself. But going back to the point that the two brothers brought, what's your name? Hashim and Sulaiman. They said it's part of Aqidah. It is. Jealousy comes up in the negative sense, not in the sense of safeguarding your family and so on and so forth. It's from a'mal al-qulub. It's from the actions of the heart. But not from the actions of the heart in the sense that it's going to get us to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. It's from the actions of the heart from the angle of it's a disease of the heart. You see what I'm saying? And that part is important to bring up, because when we're raising, sometimes it's not just a brother, it's not just a son. I mean, sometimes we have brothers, we have cousins. See what I'm saying? We have nephews. These young men, they felt some, like we say, they felt some type of way. You know, we have that in the language. Oh, he's feeling some type of way. Usually some negative. You know what I'm saying? He caught feelings. But it's a deep Aqidah issue. Right? Because it was there. They had a certain understanding of their father, which was problematic. Right? They're saying that the father is favoring Yusuf above them. And then what happens in the story with regard to that feeling of jealousy? Where does it go? I mean, this is hasad, and this is like a whole series on hasad. You know what I'm saying? Like sorry to use the example, but it's like a Netflix episode that's just on hasad, how it plays itself out.
They conspire and they throw them out.
Yeah, like this went to the level of plotting murder. You see what I'm saying? Before the throwing them in the well was the what? Was the lesser of evils. They dialogued that out among themselves. No, we're not going to kill him. You know, we're not going to kill him. But they sold their brother into slavery. You know what I'm saying? They sold their brother into slavery over what they felt. And the problem that we have is like, okay, for instance, we stay on the point of the hasad issue. But we want to use the story as a framework to analyze our condition. So you have these young men, they feel some sort of way. They feel, I'm not loved. You see what I'm saying? That's something that is like, you're not allowed to talk. You're not allowed to talk about that. In reality, you're not allowed to talk about it. Even though we have all this concept of men to express their feelings, all that type of stuff. That usually works against the men anyway. You express your feelings, it's usually a problem. In some of these environments, it's a big issue. Big issue. I mean, I grew up in North Philadelphia, so there was always that idea, like, what does it mean to be a man? It was the unspoken, the unspoken question. What does it mean to be a man? To be a man doesn't mean I have a whole bunch of females. You know what I'm saying? I have a whole bunch of women under my belt. To be a man doesn't mean that, you cross the line with me, I'll put you under. And some of these young men are actually having to make that decision. And it has gotten younger, 10 years old, 11 years old. We know and we see. We know and we see the news. We see what's going on, and we know people. And the unfortunate part of this reality is that we can say, oh, well, in the past, we can say it doesn't apply to us. Right? It doesn't apply to us as Muslims. Right? That was the issue in the past. It doesn't apply to us as Muslims. But that's not the case any longer.
Like, how the Jews, Yahudi have a rite of passage, the Muslim have a rite of passage, like when the boy become a man. But isn't it in the Islamic religion?
Yeah, the Muslims have a rite of passage, but the problem is that because our communities are not focused on that level, we're not utilizing what's the rite of passage. You see what I'm saying? Like the first step in that regard is when he's like 7 years old, you're bringing him into the salah. It's not necessarily an obligation 100%, but you're bringing him into the salah. You see what I mean? But then the other issue is when you learn about wudu, you have to learn about ghusl. We are clear on these terms? I'm not belittling anybody, but just respecting if somebody doesn't know the terms. So if we're clear on wudu, we're clear on ghusl, that means you have to know something about your manhood. You see what I'm saying? You have to know something about your manhood. You have to know something about womanhood. Right? By that stage, that child should have the understanding, I'm a young man and I'm what? We talk about puberty, bulugh. What? Huh?
I'm responsible.
Yes, I'm mukallaf. I'm responsible. So that awareness should be there. I'm responsible for what?
Sins and
Huh? Yeah, I on the spiritual realm, I'm accountable to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in terms of reward and punishment. In terms of being a young adult, I'm responsible. The ulama, they debated. If you can't see the signs of puberty, like the little peach fuzz coming out, or the voice changing, or whatever like that, or there's no wet dream, then some of them said it automatic 15, some of them said it automatic 18. Then it was just like there's no question after that. I mean, and if you look, what American law, what do they say usually? Like once you get 18, then you have the driver's permit and all that. Before that, that's kind of like you're being introduced into the society, right? But those things are defaults. In the Muslim world, we already had that understanding. Remember that these countries in the Western world, when they're setting up the legal system, they're not always coming from nowhere. You see what I'm saying? They're borrowing also from the Muslims. That's facts. There's research done on that and all of that. Especially with French law, is very clear. They borrow from Maliki fiqh. But the issue of responsibility, that's where now where the whole struggle begins. So we let's back up a little bit so we can regroup. So what did we say about the condition or the situation of boys? And we used the example of Yusuf's brothers. What did we say? Go deeper, take a lesson out of it.
What?
Feeling like they were neglected, but take a lesson out of it. What do we gain when we're looking at how to deal with young men, how to raise them? What is it that we gain from that example? That we have to pay attention to what? Huh?
Pay attention to what anybody, how we treat them, and also be aware of what anybody who's gonna catch feelings and stuff like that.
Yes.
Be aware how they might be feeling.
Yeah.
And addressing
Yes.
it before it gets.
Yes. That's the part that we're missing on. Right? What happened in the Ummah, we put a lot of attention on the girls. So the girls are very clear, they're clear. I want to do this in life. Want this out of life. By the time I get to this age, this is where I'm going to be. I want this type of man to marry. And then the family supports that. You see what I'm saying? If you're going to get married, it has to be according to this criteria and he has to bring this standard, whatever. In some communities, the boys say, yeah, you have to study this, right? You have to be this, like these different professions, and that's it. And we see the end results on the other side, on the counseling side, because he's not ready for the marriage. He's not ready to handle, he may be ready to pay the bills, money-wise, but he can't handle the responsibility. And so part of the studies, there was a guy named Leonard Sachs. He wrote a book called Boys Adrift. First, he started with European American young boys. Then he looked at, I think it was like community of Puerto Ricans. Then he looked at African Americans, and he started seeing a pattern across the board with young boys and their motivation and where they're at and how they, think about life. And he started seeing that, he started looking at the educational system, how the educational system is failing them. They're getting in trouble or they're disengaged. He started to see more and more disorientation in the young boys. And so he picked some things like, okay, what's the major complaint about a lot of young boys? Where are they at? Are they out practicing to be in the NBA? I mean, that was like 15, 20 years back, right? 30 years back. Where are they at now? The digital NBA. The video games. And that stuff goes into what? Marriage. You're still playing video games. Babies come, you're still playing video games. The other thing is the place of men in the society is not what it was. There's a lot of attack on men. There's an automatic default that the man is violent. That's the default position. It's based on a concept that came from what they say the Duluth study. And the Duluth study is not even scientifically based. That's important. Because when you bring in the data about domestic violence, in many communities, domestic violence is bidirectional, meaning that the sisters have enough boxing skills as the men. The sisters can get just as violent as the men. But the way that the society is operating is assumed to be what? The male. It's changing now, though. It's definitely changing. That's why we see the population of women in the prison system increase. Some people say, "Whoa, why are you bringing this here?" Because when we look at, for instance, the condition of the family, and we're looking at the image of the men, if you think that the men are violent automatically and they have to be trained and domesticated, that's what the concept is, right? That stuff was pushed in the court system. It was pushed in the law. Then that means, how are you thinking about the boys? You know what I'm saying? That's the type of question that we have to bring into the equation. So are you, the other issue that comes up, same author wrote a book, Gender Matters. How many of you had children? Raise your hands. How many of you have boys and girls? You have a boy and a girl? So mashallah, the boy and the girl are the same, right? Are they? No. So what? No, but what tells the difference between how do you give some signs?
In my case scenario, the boy holds more responsibility than the girl, and he's younger than the girl.
Oh, okay, that's good. Not putting you on the spot, but
I'm gonna say, yeah, it seems like the girls mature a little bit more faster than the boys. They understand things, and I don't know. That's what I noticed with my kids.
average age of maturity, we talked about Islamically, but I'm gonna say something to that. Average age of maturity in this country, I'm not talking about other countries, talking about this country, which is a serious problem. 25 years old, they start to mature. So if the woman is already advanced, the young lady is advancing in maturity, and the young man is what? Is lagging behind. When they go into a relationship, is it matching 100%? It's not matching. So, the first thing first, when we look at there's a difference in gender. But when we go back to the story it's important to pay attention to the development of the boys, not just physically, although they need that. They need that. Boys need that. You know, we live in a society now where if you get a little boo-boo, oh, you can't, you little boo-boo, you can't go outside anymore. I'm dead serious. I mean, the opposite extreme is don't cry. You know what I'm saying? Opposite, don't cry. You know, and so it's like you just broke your leg. You know what I'm saying? Don't cry. You know what I'm saying? Hold it in. Be a man. You cry, I hit you. You know, we have that type of parenting. We have the extremes in it. But the point is, pay attention to the development of the young men. That story of Yusuf is what we see many of these cities. These young boys are broken. They're broken. And it's not necessarily to feel sorry for them. It's to say, man, like, what are we not doing in the process of educating? It's not an issue of a pity case. You know what I'm saying? But they're broken. And they're broken and they're carrying that. So then that's where the violence comes in. Okay, it may not be the violence where, you know, I'll be back. You know, you shoot up the block. But it could be the violence where it's like, you know, you say the wrong thing to me and I'm married to you and it's a wrap. You know what I'm saying? It's I'll put you in your place. That type of, and it's an unfortunate reality because on the other side, if you're a father with daughters, now it comes back to, you know, all right, I have to think here. You know, do I make them disappear? You know, do I hurt them? You know what I'm saying? And the system doesn't necessarily forgive that too easily. See what I'm saying? So that means if I hurt them too much, I get locked up. So then now I'm out of the picture. So then we have this imbalance in that regard. So that's important. It's important that we have to pay attention to to the development of these young men, the discipline part, the sense of direction part, what direction that they're going. Now Yusuf, alayhi salatu wasalam, he took that direction from his father. He took it. And Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam becomes the aid of his father to rebuild the broken family. You see, he was that child that had that, even though, yes, he's a prophet, but he had that capacity to rebuild, you know, the family. Now, Yaqub, did he give up on his sons? He didn't give up on them, right? That's an important piece. Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam didn't give up on them. Yaqub, he was hurt though, you know, to the point where he went blind from crying. It was Yusuf brought the healing back. All that stuff is miraculous stuff. Now you're dealing with the lives of the prophets, but we can get stuff on the average human level from this, that yes, when your children go that route, you can't give up on them, but what is human to what? To feel that the pain that's coming from that. You know what I'm saying? Because like a lot of Muslims in today's time, they have issues with their kids and they hide it. And then when it gets so out of hand, they don't know what to do next, so they're cutting the person off completely. It's bad. You know, I have to talk to you from like the gutter part and then the optimistic part. You know what I'm saying? The hopeful part, where we should be part. But this is not a problem that's just one group of people. It's not just a class thing. You know, before we can say, oh, well, you know, that affects them over there. No, that's not the case at all. One time I was talking about the problem of addiction. And I was in a suburb. So I was in Ohio. So one of the brothers, he decides he's going to be smart. Brother, why are you talking to us about this issue? This doesn't affect us. This affects those people over there in Cleveland, Ohio, brother. I said, oh yeah, brother. I said, last time I checked, that uppity school, that public school that you send your children to, Solid, it has one of the highest rates of heroin addiction in the county. Because they can afford it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we have, so these youth are going into that environment. Not to mention the stories of sending your children to college, right? And the young girl gets raped, but she's not getting raped from Buddy, the non-Muslim. It was Muhammad who did it. We're not talking theory, we're not talking just hypotheticals. You see what I'm saying? Like, the stuff is real. So the education of the boys in terms of responsibility, that stuff is important for us. It's important for us because once they go a certain route, it's not only affecting that individual, it's affecting the family, it's affecting the community, it's affecting others. So what we learn from that story is it's important from an early age when we're talking about lessons in Aqeedah and so on and so forth. What's the condition of the heart? How to deal with that feeling of, I'm not loved, that type of concept. You see what I'm saying? In this case, that got out of hand. It became jealousy. It turned into other things. Hasad is a deep thing. Hasad is a deep thing. Another thing that's very interesting to show you the level of maturity that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam had. When Yusuf re-encountered his brothers, as the story goes, he held no hatred in his heart for them. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
Keeping the mouse of the heart in check, you don't become a slave to your emotion, what you feel, and that's a lesson that comes from Allah. That you're not. If your emotion go unchecked, you could just have desire to take a lady and assault her, which is rape.
And that's a very rare thing. That's somebody, as human beings, our natural reaction is, you got hurt, you want payback, you want to die.
They try to kill him.
Would you say that maturity is more mature?
That's the point that I want to make is where do we get our concepts of manhood from and humanity from? Is it just psychology, or are we seeing a movie, or the prophets in this case? They're giving us a model for emotional health, for spiritual health, intellectual health, leadership. We have to go back to that. See what I'm saying? We're taking Elon Musk and, this boxer and this, I'm not saying that they don't have some insights, but they can't be the, what's the whole purpose of saying Iman bil Rusul, that we believe in the Rusul and the messengers and along with that, with the prophets as the, as the model of humanity. I mean, we ourselves as Muslims, we divide between ourselves and the way the people of the book look at the prophets. Why? Because they have corrupt beliefs about the prophets. That's a key point. There's no school, there's no this group of Aqeedah and that group of Aqeedah is going to differ over this point of Iman. This is like a clear-cut issue that we believe certain realities about the prophets. Like, that's not like, well, we have tons of different opinions of this. It's not like that. You see what I'm saying? So in order for us to see our potential, because we have to realize this society is based on an idea of the human being, which is a default idea for the society. And the default idea is essentially the human being is what? Evil. Like, that's an Aqeedah issue. How do we think about the human being? What do we say about the child that's born? Every child is what?
Born on the fitrah.
Yeah, every child is born on the fitrah. That Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala established the fitrah the nature of the human being, and the nature of the human being is essentially good. But it's the parents and it's the environment which transform the individual. Yes, there may be some situations in which the person, they start to incline in a particular direction that corrupts their nature, like we see these young men. They have certain unfestered feelings and so on and so forth, but it's not that they didn't have guidance. They were living in the household of prophethood. They decided to what? To do their own thing. They thought they knew better than their father. They thought they can get over on their father. But at that age, they're what? At that age, they're what? Yeah, they're mature, meaning what? They're responsible. You know, that's why we say, let's be careful how we judge families. Because what do we do if the children are, like we say, off the chain, or if the children are not well disciplined or they have issues? What do we say usually?
The parents.
Yeah, that's not always the case that is the parents. It's not always the case that it's the parents. Some of these parents, we need to give them a break. Some of them are broken themselves. They put so much into their children, and their children have opted to go the opposite way completely. That's just the reality. But when we look at the hadith of the man who killed 99 men, everybody knows the hadith. There's an element to that hadith which is missing in the way we think about things. What's that element that's missing in the way we think about things?
Is it the environment that I'm
Just like the environment corrupts, you have to change the environment to what? To get out of the corruption. To get out of the corruption. That's like one-on-one with the issue when it comes to like drug addiction, where we see the human being struggling. If you don't change the environment, you see what I'm saying? Then, yeah, it's easy to go back. You could be the strongest of the strongest. You can hold it down emotionally and spiritually for a while, and you get to a point where your stress level is tested on the wrong day. I knew a brother who, may Allah have mercy on him, Abdul Muqsi. I've mentioned him by name so Allah can reward him. Abdul Muqsi, and it's sad. Abdul Muqsi is sad. He was addicted to heroin. And he was clean. And you won't believe how Abdul Muqsi hit the street on heroin again. It'll boggle your mind. He was memorizing Surah Al-Fatiha with a brother. And upon completion of Surah Al-Fatiha, the brother shared with him pawn. You know pawn? You know pawn? Pawn is in the Daisy community is a certain type of tobacco that they use. They put it in their mouth and they chew it. They add on to it is a stimulant. They can increase the level, decrease the level of the stimulant. That hit Abdul Muqsi the wrong way. He ended up on the street. That's another issue that we have, like the way that we judge the people that are out there when we don't know the story. But the environmental factor, right? This was brought into his environment. It didn't work for him really well. There was no, of course it was innocent, you know what I'm saying? It was like not a thought out thing that happened. But the environment can build us or the environment can break us, right? And that's why sometimes we're asking a lot from our children. We send them to public school, not to say that Islamic school is always better, but we send them to public school or we send them out in the society and they have a series of challenges and then we expect them to come squeaky clean. We expect them to come squeaky clean and they're not going to come back squeaky clean. If in the household of prophethood itself, those youth had a challenge, then what about outside of that reality, right? So let's reel this in. Does anybody have any comments, any reflections on this point? Can somebody summarize some of the key ideas from here?
Yeah, based on the family, like depending on, even if you come from a good family, that if the children, but you have to take into consideration other outside environmental factors that can contribute to their growth too.
Yes.
So depending on that child's basically, they hold on to their fitra and absorb the good of what they have to learn from their household and what they learn from the outside. They can stay on the right path, but if they absorb too much of the negative things and no matter.
Or if the family too does damage to them emotionally.
So then that can contribute to them going off being, to the wrong path. But at the end of the day, I guess only Allah guides you.
Yeah, but we had to put effort. Yeah. That's the whole role of da'wah.
Circle of peers, right? Like the environment shapes you, and it matters who the brothers that you hang out with.
Yes.
That's on the religion of your friend, like that's the prophet.
Yeah.
But in terms of the kids, it seems like instead of like always harp them, also actually try to be involved to like help them navigate some of the
Yes. Actually, that's a big mistake that we make, the lecturing piece with the kids. Boys especially, they don't vibe with it. They need the experiences. Boys, that whole, you sit there and you lecture them, yeah, they may get that like in 15 years from now. My dad used to say this, you know what I'm saying? But in the meantime, the experience and being with them. Let me ask you a question. Today compared to 20 years back, 15 years back, let's put it on the table. We're not gonna have time to deal with it, but it's something to get everybody to think.
That's a good question.
What's the cost of a home in today's time? In a decent school system, safe environment, because we're not asking people to be where the AR-15s are shooting off and there's robberies and you go down the block and somebody's getting shot up. Safe environment, a semi-decent, respectable school system. Well, give me a price tag.
I mean, it's a lot more expensive
Yeah, no. Give me a price tag.
for the home.
Yeah, average.
now or then.
Now.
400K.
For 400K, 300K, 400K, 500K, million. There's a reason why I'm bringing this up. Okay, let's just keep it 300K, 400K. Who's expected to pay that? I'm dead serious. Who's expected to pay that? The husband. If he gets help from the sister, isn't it? Yeah, it's a heated issue in our community. Okay, let's start that off. 400K. Let's be honest. Mahr, put it on the table. How much are some of these mahur? How much?
10K.
MashaAllah, 10K, yeah. Barakah.
40 or more. 20K.
50,000, 100,000. Okay, so we're up to 500,000, right? We're up to 500,000, right? Does it stop there? How much is the gold?
Maybe 300K.
The gold.
Oh, gold.
Yeah, in some communities, how much is the gold roughly?
Yeah.
20,000.
Huh?
Yeah, 2,200K.
Okay, so we're up to 5.25. 500,000, 5.25. Okay. the marriage party. How much?
72,
How much?
50K is the average.
50K. And he's expected to have a car. Yeah. The reason why I mentioned that, you see the challenge that we put our boys at? That's the challenge that we're putting the boys at in some communities. In other communities, they have another set of challenges. But with that type of challenge, is it possible for us to really move forward with Islamic marriage as it is, the way that it's operating now? I mean, my man, if he's not a doctor, if he didn't come from generational wealth, he's in debt.